All right, let's give the Allies their turn. Shooting at our headquarters. The Allies have won this game, you've lost. Okay, well, thought we had a couple more turns. Game ended in a minor Ally victory. Okay, let's look at this here. We could have taken this the first turn. I think I played it better, the supply dump there. I don't know, other than obviously taking it first turn, concentrated a little better on taking out the 2 units that started here. First turn could have freed up more stuff. More units, obviously. I don't know how you easily would have gotten to 80 plus victory points. I'm sure it's possible. Yeah, I guess I needed to be a bit more aggressive. I was trying to make sure that I got like these units up there. And you'll notice the icon changes here. It had been the Jagdpanzers. Now it's switched over here because there's now more of these because of losses. So you just keep that in mind. It does sort of show the dominant. This is the main icon is the dominant one. If there's enough of something else to be a sub that's like for reconnaissance or whatever, you will see a second icon on some of these. So yeah, okay, that's the end of this. We'll give us enough time to check out another scenario here. Okay, but before we do so, Joachim Piper definitely was involved in ordering and participating in some massacre, so a war criminal. And I want to read this. On Bastille Day, July 14th, 1976, so well after the war, French. He moves to France. For some reason, he lives in France. I don't know why. In a village. I just don't get that. Why he wants to live in France. Prison. Yeah, he had been in prison. I don't know why he moves to France. But French anti-Nazis attack and torch Piper's house in Trevors, or however you pronounce it. When the fire was extinguished, firefighters found a charred remains of a man holding a pistol and a .22 caliber rifle as if defending himself. Arson investigators determined that the person had died of smoke inhalation. The anti-Nazi group, the Avengers, claimed responsibility for the arson that killed Piper. Nonetheless, because of the destruction caused by the arson, the French police authorities remain unconvinced that Joachim Piper was the person found. So yeah, this is sort of an interesting thing. It is speculated that it wasn't him. And that, he disappears, whether to Argentina or just some other French village, some other place with another identity. I don't know. But that's the end of what we know of Piper. That is this guy right here. Okay, famous for, of course, the Malmedy massacre. Now that's famous because because it happened to Americans and Americans know about it. So yeah. Okay. Now let's see. We have about 30 minutes, so I don't know. We're not going to obviously get to a full game, but let's see. What does this one look like? I didn't know it was going to be that short. I didn't think we'd get through it in one turn or one setting here. Okay. September 44. Until it was given orders to stop Patton's army advance at any cost using newly formed Panzer brigades. Yeah, okay. Battle of Aracourt. 5th Panzer Army. Panzer Brigades released the 11th Panzer Division and the 111th and 113th Panzer Brigades to stop and destroy the Americans, who nearly encircled Nancy, defended by the 551st Volksgrenadier Division. You know, okay. Just a little background here. I know you guys sort of like me talking about history. Volksgrenadier Division. Well, unless I'm looking up things. Yeah, Beam Slam. No, it's not an excuse. And yes, I do think sort of the Eastern Front element. You know, the sort of race war, the no quarter war, especially the SS had with the Soviets, because I'm pretty damn sure they did take Waffen SS prisoners, but it was definitely a common occurrence to not take them, not to. See, there's a difference in warfare, because I remember some. I forget who it was writing it or talking about it, but during the American invasion of Iraq, this sort of last major time, and sort of in the northern invasion, you know, they had some embed reporters, and with some of the special forces, and they come in and sort of defeat an Iraqi unit, and then all the Iraqis are running away through the field, and the reporters just horrified that the Americans are just machine gunning down all these Iraqi soldiers as they're just running away. Well, of course they're machine gunning Iraqi soldiers as they're running away, because those Iraqi soldiers, whether they had guns or not, can run over the next hill or sand dune or into the village or whatever and pick up a rifle and come back and shoot them. They hadn't surrendered. You don't, and even if they are trying to surrender, you know, they have their hands up. You don't have to accept, according to the laws and customs of war, you do not have to accept to surrender, because we see, like in the war in the Pacific, the Japanese, whether pretending to surrender, which they did at times, or just wounded or whatever, and having that last sort of hand grenade with them, with the pin pulled and, you know, ready to throw it, ready to release it, or if they're wounded, you know, maybe, you know, it'll just sit there under their body until an American moves them and they blow up. So you do not have to even accept the surrender of soldiers. But once you do accept, in the Malmedy massacre were definitely prisoners that had been accepted as prisoners and, you know, moved around in the back of a truck and got out and then machine gunned down. So there's a difference between not accepting a surrender and just, you know, or just shooting running away troops. That's perfectly fine as the rules of war to do so, because they're just simply fleeing. So yeah, that's different. You know, either if Americans were like trying to surrender, you know, and the Germans weren't having it and just still shooting them, or what? No, the Malmedy was clearly, because of survivors from it, clear enough evidence that they, and I don't think it's really disputed by anyone, that they had been accepted as prisoners and done this. Now, okay, let's for the moment take morality and the rules of war out of it. Okay, just let's remove those two questions. And this is what I think sort of, to a point, enraged some of the German commanders when they heard about this, because it quickly spreads to the American forces, the Malmedy, because there were a few survivors and they get around. When you do that, I mean, why do you do this? Out of hatred? Out of fear? Or just simply as maybe some would go, well, we don't want to spare the guys to guard these prisoners of war. And yeah, I'm sure in their mind they think they're going to get to kill them all and they'll just all be dead and no one will really know much about it. But if the enemy knows you'll be accepted as a prisoner, so let's say, the Ardennes Offensive, and you're taken as a prisoner. Well, you can sort of look at, your watch or your calendar and realize, I'm not going to be a prisoner that long. Might as well just give up now. In a few weeks, a month or two, the Americans are going to be rolling into whatever prisoner of war camp, and I'll be liberated. So might as well, if you're in a sticky situation, you might as well just surrender. Okay? Now, that helps out the soldiers that are fighting here, because the enemy soldiers, because they don't have fewer casualties. And yeah, there's good reason to keep fighting, because every moment of delay, whether your rescue happens or it could be like the Falaise pocket soldiers could get out, or maybe they bring up reinforcements to keep a pocket from happening or whatever. So there's reasons to keep fighting. But at some point, if you're running low on ammunition, so we've each got 10 rounds left, well, hey, maybe at that point you just surrender, because yeah, you could die hard, but if there doesn't look like there's any real point to it and whatnot, you might as well, because you're no longer really an effective fighting force, surrender. And so it sort of helps the enemy out too. And if it's not really going to hurt your side much, yeah, okay, go ahead and surrender. Now, I would not blame soldiers for you're down to the last few bullets and there's really very apparently no relief coming, and yeah, you might kill a few more of the enemies, you might delay them another half hour, 30 minutes or something like that. Maybe you can give up, and I'm not going to judge somebody harshly for doing that. Okay, so there's good reason for that. But if you know or think you might just be massacred afterwards, why the hell are you going to surrender? You're going to fight doggedly. And this is different than as opposed to like a retreating force that's constantly falling back and delaying, and that's different. And you keep fighting if you can keep fighting effectively, even if it's a retreat, even if it's just hiding in the woods for a while or whatever. But the whole Malmedy thing will backfire on you, in my opinion. Now, again, like you already had the blood feud of the SS versus the Soviets on the Eastern Front. So I get that, and yeah, I know you're not saying it's an excuse. Take the Brits and U.S. did the same once in a while. For that matter, maybe less number, but yes, there are gray areas there. Yeah, well, you see, I don't know, and I've definitely seen film footage of Americans like it was live shot. So it's film of a German soldier of some sort shooting a Panzerfest, hitting and at least knocking out a tank, and then popping up with his hands up, and the other tank back in the line just machine guns the guy. Well, he didn't accept a surrender. That guy pops and puts his hands up. I surrender now that I just killed the tank. I mean, that's literally, because you see it in the film. But he didn't surrender. And I don't know of a case. Now, and I know at the beginning of the Band of Brothers where they leave it very sort of mysterious whether it happened or not. You have the one lieutenant that supposedly goes over and machine guns 4 or 5 guys standing, captured soldiers. That very well may have happened. And, Yeah, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but it's just different that these guys were in trucks, moved to a field, got out, and they'd set it up to sort of, to machine gun them all down. I don't know that that really happened. I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen anywhere in the American forces during World War II, and of course the winners get to, judge the losers. So it's, but that if it did happen, something as orchestrated as, approved at the high level, at least like Piper's level of command order to do it, versus just some lieutenant or whatever, or a sergeant or a private or whatever just deciding to shoot them up. You'll notice a lot of photos of I forget which number, but the SS Hitlerjugend division, the Hitler Youth division of the SS. Well, they had, around the Battle of Caen and early in the D-Day, massacred some British soldiers. So you see photos sort of through the rest of the war, a lot of with them in British custody, all beaten up, bloody faced, because the Brits that captured them later on would just beat the crap, break noses and bloody them up, and probably crack ribs and whatnot. And I'm sure probably a few of them got shot by Private Smith or Jones or whatever, that didn't see the light of day, and that it was just sort of a private, so as in just no one really noticed and just killed them. But yeah, there was sort of a campaign, because it's photographed enough. I'm not that I know of a photograph or filming of an actual beating, but you see these guys afterwards that they're beaten up pretty badly. Yeah, that was sort of a revenge thing, that continues for a while, and the British don't seem to be putting an end to the beat them a bit once you capture them, kind of thing. To Hitlerjugend, not to the Waffen-SS, not to German soldiers generally, but it was to that particular division that retribution was put out. But it's not as well set up. So if you do not have to accept a surrender. That is strictly not legal to kill anyone surrendering. No, you do. If somebody is attempting to surrender, you do not have to accept it. There was back in the 70s for American PBS, and I watched the series, sort of Ethics in War, and they go into it and they look at the legal, and this is, the Geneva Conventions, and the lawyers at the time, the military lawyers, looked at all of it, and the ethics and the practicality. So, you do not have to accept a surrender. So now if if they shout out, we surrender, and you sort of like say, yeah, come out with your hands up, and then you shoot them, that wouldn't be allowed. But if you go F no and just keep shooting them, you don't accept the surrender. That's different. So once you, if you're trying to surrender, if you try to surrender, so it's different. Now, like I say, if, and obviously there can, one group of, we accept your surrender, so the Germans are coming out, and then another group at long range just sees a bunch of Germans walking out of somewhere, and they shoot them. They didn't know that another group, another friendly group had accepted the surrender. So yeah, they might still be killed, because that would be an accident of war, shall we say, confusion of war. But once you've accepting the surrender and having all the people on your side know that they, accepted the surrender, and there's that sort of, area of danger, that, getting into proper custody. But once you get them into proper custody, that's different matter. And if you can say F no, or just keep shooting, or whatever. But once you more or less accept their surrender, you're responsible. Your side is now responsible for them. Again, we're talking the legalities of war, not necessarily the actions in. And you can also talk about illegal combatants. We can maybe call them terrorists. That's a different matter, because you're considering them criminals. I'm not talking like Waffen-SS. I'm talking, what we would commonly see as terrorists, that you may very well lie to them because you're considering them illegal combatants, so they're not covered by the Geneva Conventions and the Hague and whatever, so they're outside of the protections of that. When the surrender is obvious, it is not legal unless they take up arms again. That's not my understanding. Not from everything that I've read, heard. You do not have to accept a surrender. You can go no quarter. You do not have to take it. Yeah, and see, you can look at the classic. I know I'm supposed to sort of be playing the game, but I hope this is entertaining. You look at the classic example of Sergeant York and World War I. I don't know. Again, another good movie, Sergeant York. You should all watch it if you're into it. He captures 100+ Germans. Now, and the movie supposedly of the action is supposedly pretty right. I mean, a lot of times these soldiers go, yeah, that's whatever, and don't really care. But supposedly Sergeant York consulted on it, and it was just supposedly like a pistol change. I forget whether they used the Luger instead of the 1911, or the 1911 instead of the Luger, or whatever. But he captures, basically single-handedly 100+ German soldiers, partly by putting a gun to the head of a German commander and telling him, hey, if you don't order your troops to surrender, because I will shoot you. And the guy really doesn't, and because they're in danger, and the Germans have a few of his surviving friends pinned down. Well, once the Germans surrender, then his friends get out and help with, disarming. But it's like less than 20 people on his side walk back 100+ or whatever people. And so until they sort of get all these guys unarmed and are marching them back, there's very much a danger that to York and to his fellow soldiers, that any one of these people that he has under the gun, and they put their hands up, and he's threatening to kill them if he doesn't have the other ones to survive. All it takes is one guy to walk around a corner of a trench to see him and shoot him, that hadn't surrendered. So it's very much of a dangerous situation until that point. Hello, Richard of York. So otherwise, you need to take prisoners. So yeah, well, okay. We're gonna at least do this. Get the setups here. I know it's coming to Richard of York's in about 8 minutes. Well, 7 minutes. Here. Okay. We'll just be doing this. Don't worry, Richard. I know you're coming up here. Okay, we'll just look at this quickly here. The situation. Okay. We are supposed to be stopping them from pushing on through here. Move. They freed up our Panzer division. So we have a bridge here, and a bridge up there. think this is otherwise bridge there uncrossable. Well, that's a reconnaissance unit. We're going to move him to there. We've already spotted it. We have weak forces down here, so we want to I don't know that there's really a good point in holding there, so we're going to move to here. Begin to hold this bridge. Now they can come around, they can cross this stream over here. So because see, like I said, it's different that he accepted their surrender. And that's different. Those soldiers were under the custody. See, I'm talking. There's a difference between disarmed person in your custody, in your area of operations, where when Sergeant York is literally alone, standing, laying, whatever it was at the moment, with a gun to another guy's head, and there were 100 soldiers. If they had just turned around and looked at Sergeant York and saw that he was there, they would have shot him. And so he was in that sort of danger. And had their commanding officer not told them to surrender, they very likely would have done so. So that there is a difference. And so if you haven't seen Sergeant York, it's a great movie. I would highly recommend it. Being too stacked up there. Now, we know there's this unit here, so we are going to do some artillery fire on it. Basically, this is all the time I have, so which would have been fairly long. So we're going to save this game. Now it's we'll save this for future reference because I'll probably be back playing. Well, I highly recommend watching Sergeant York. Very, very good movie. Okay, well, I'm going to leave you to Richard. I forget what he's playing. I know they said it earlier. I'm sure it will be very entertaining and fun to watch. So thank you all for hanging out with